Good evening. It's Tuesday, January 16th on or about 7 p.m. This is a regular session, Athens City Council. Our President of Council, Sam Crow, is acting mayor tonight, which makes me President Pro Tem Jeff Reisner here at the dais. First thing we're going to do is establish a quorum, and I see all members are present. Second is communications. We'll start with elected officials from City Council. Let me just get two items out of the way as communications. Two applications for liquor license transfers. First one I have here is, says 264 Chairs LLC, 24.5 East State Street, Athens, Ohio, from Zoe at Eclipse LLC, DBA Zoe, 24.5 East State Street. The next one is 4 EGMS Athens LLC, 14 South Court Street, Athens, Ohio, from 4 EG Liberty LLC and patio, 7500 Vale Street, A104, Liberty Township, Liberty, Ohio. So if there's no objections from council or members of the public about these transfers, the council will pass them on up to the state. If there is, then we'll have to apply to the state of Ohio Liquor Control Board for a hearing. So that's the way that works.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Are you saying that the Zoe's liquor license is going to that second entity? Is it a transfer from one of those to the other?
As it reads here, yeah, the from is Zoe, to is 64 Chairs.
Okay.
Yeah, Member Allen?
So Zoe's not going anywhere, same building, just different
Right.
owner.
Yeah, that's what I had heard.
I do have a question about the second one, though. You go way back to the 70s, that block of Court Street wasn't much different than the next block down in terms of liquor establishments, both sides of the street and all of that. And in the 80s and the 90s, they began to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle to the point where there weren't any anymore. Mm-hmm. And if I read this correctly, this allows both carry-out and on-premise consumption, beer, wine, spirituous liquors, in a macaroni and cheese shop.
Yes.
I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Well, as I said, we can request a hearing from the state of Ohio, but I don't know what more we can do what more information would you want?
Is it going to be limited to carry out? Is it going to be on-premise consumption? I've talked to some of the neighbors there. They're curious. I'd just like some more information.
Yeah.
Before just, blankly checking and signing off. And you know what? There may be nothing to it.
Yeah. Well, let's ask our law director.
Well, I did get this from the clerk today, and the one that you're talking about for the business, mac and cheese, as you said, business, it has two, and it's a D5 and a D6. The D5 is spirituous liquor for on-premises consumption only, beer, wine, and mixed beverages for on-premises or off-premises in original sealed containers until 2:30 a.m. And the D6 is for the sale of intoxicating liquor on Sunday between the hours of 10 a.m. and 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and midnight. And the permits from an 4EG Liberty LLC and patio in Liberty Township, Ohio, 214 South Court Street, the Mac Shack, that's the actual name of it. So that's what it's for. I do want to remind you that next door to it, at the bubble tea place, they have a permit to provide, they called it boozy bubbles, if you recall. So that's all I know. I only know what is in this permit and what I discussed today with the clerk.
The difference in the two is the former is a simple transfer. where this is a Trex permit. And a Trex permit is based on the fact that it's going to produce economic development. And I'd just like to hear the business plan or whatever. I don't know who we need to talk with other than,
Well, the only thing I can suggest is we discuss it in committee,
that would be fine.
okay?
Yeah.
So,
Do we have a deadline?
February.
Okay, so we have a committee meeting before that. Okay.
okay, so we'll put it on the agenda for next week then.
And maybe would be appropriate for the president of council or the law director to possibly contact the business affected by this to provide us with some clarity and answers to questions?
I certainly can do that.
Okay. Other communications, from members of council? Members of, no, okay. From the administration? Mr.
Nothing.
Acting Mayor?
Nothing from the administration for myself.
Nothing from Service Safety Director? And I don't, okay. I didn't see your hand when I asked from council, so,
That's okay. I just wondered if the administration would say it. I talked with our Director of Public Works and today, and he gave me some good information that I was hoping maybe the acting mayor would mention, because it's pretty cool. He said that the city will be spending $1 million to fix an ADA ramps on multiple parts of the city, which is very good news, and having been on the Pedestrian Accessibility Committee, this is something that we really hoped would happen. And the reason it didn't come before council is because it was all done in-house. I think that's very impressive. You want to add to that, Director Stone?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Member Spotis. To clarify what the city engineer, was talking about, this is money that we've received from the Ohio Department of Transportation. I think we've talked about it a couple times last year after that came through, to do improvements to, ADA improvements to curb ramps citywide. His point specifically is we didn't hire a design firm to do this. The work that is happening, it's not a complicated design. I mean, it's, basically, mapping and identifying locations and, getting some elevations and some adjustments with curb radius and then putting together a project. But we had an engineering intern that worked for the assistant engineer for a period of time while we still had her, and then ultimately for Solly, who worked on putting together the set of plans. And so, versus spending money on like a more complicated design, we would have to with a design firm. We didn't have to do that in this particular endeavor. And so when we go forward to seek appropriation of that ODOT money for us to construct it, it will be with a set of plans drawn in-house.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear it, so thank you very much. That to me is very good news. I also want to mention that he said that, as we know, Jessica Dine left a bit ago, and he said, good news that we have hired a new Jessica Dine. Did not name that person because she hasn't started yet, but she's supposed to start the 22nd, and I'm real pleased about that. So things are moving forward, and thank you very much.
Treasurer, do you have anything?
Good evening. It's been a little while since I've come and visited you guys, but I wanted to come and give you sort of a 2023 year-end summary on our investments and the interest that we've accumulated over the past year. I sent all this an email to you guys earlier today, so I think you all have that and you may have already looked at it. Basically, the reason I kind of want to give you a report is we kind of met our goal. In 2023, I've mentioned to you that we had more money that we could invest. We identified more money that we felt like we could put into some short-term investments. Interest rates were at a very good level, so we decided to go ahead and move some things around. As a result, in 2023, we were able to accumulate well over $1 million in interest for the city. So that's pretty cool. That went very well for us. I gave you the report. The first sheet you can see is kind of a month-to-month summary of where all this interest is coming from. Keeping in mind, and I did mark it off to the side, that the ACG money, the Appalachians Community Grant that we got, that interest is always set aside for what we called our rainy day fund. So I kind of made a little mark off to the side of that so everybody would know that that's where that is. The next 3 pages of that report then are kind of what we've talked about a lot of times with the auditor, and I have reminded you that where the interest goes, we have all this money, where does it end up going at the end of the year or every month? And these are all the funds. You know, there's 3 pages worth of the funds, and you can see the amounts as to where all that interest and how it got broke down and applied into the city's accounting system. Again, I did make a note that the second report reflects the net interest after the management fees have been removed. We do have fees that we have to pay for our Red Tree investment firm and with Park National Bank. So, you know, this doesn't have those fees, and then also does not have the Appalachians Community Grant money in there too. That's why the two amounts look different on those 2 pages. But again, you can, that way just everybody can see kind of how that got broken down. And then lastly, I just want to give everybody a little bit of a clue as to, you know, just where all the money's at. There's 3 pages worth. You can certainly look through them and see, you know, the different investment accounts that we have. We have the Star Ohio account, our Chase account, and then the Chase account, which we call Bank 22, that's our short-term one for the ACG grant. So again, anything that I put on here, and I made sure that I put on here that, you know, some of these investments will diminish. So the good news is we've done really well in 23. The bad news is some of this investment money will go away because as we pay, as the ACG grant gets dwindled down, as we pay, as the fire station comes through and we start using that money, those investments will go down as well too, and then we'll be just left with the others. But you can see I put on here all the current yields as to what everything is. You know, if anybody has any questions on those, feel free to ask. The last one, I made a little note too that the yield on that isn't very good. Probably this Friday we're going to work to change that as well with People's Bank, because we was in contact with them today that we can kind of rework that and make a little more money out of that as well. To put this in perspective, I did a little research and looked back to previous years. The most that I could ever find in one year that we accumulated was $318,000, and that was in 2021. But again, this is just a factor of we are at the right place at the right time. We have money that's come into the city that's going to be used for other projects, but in the short term, we've been able to invest it. Our interest rates are also really high. So we've kind of hit both things at the right time. As for the future, it's pretty much, I don't want to say it's a sure thing because nothing in life ever is, but I would venture to say in 2024 will easily be $1 million or more again, just based on the investments that I already have in place, that already have a set interest rate that's going to go through into 2024, and the money that we'll accumulate off of those. We should be, you know, easily able to accumulate that money again. I wouldn't want to speculate much farther than that. In talking to Peoples today, they're already saying, hey, get your, what we want to get done, we're going to try and get done on Friday because rates could start to drop next week. So we're going to try and get things done, you know, now and lock them in. Anybody have any questions? I figured.
When we do the budget process every year, the auditor projects what income tax revenue is going to be and other sources that the city has. Mm-hmm. Do we do a line item projection on interest that we earn, that we're possibly going to earn as part of the budget, or is that separate from?
No, the Auditor Act includes this as well. Probably about 2 to 3 months ago, I worked up for the auditor projection as how we were going to finish the year. We kind of had a good feeling we were going to be right about where we are, because that way, as Auditor Hecht is trying to project the income that she needs to see, you know, coming in, she can use these numbers. In the past, you know, it was easy. The number really didn't fluctuate much in the past, you know, so it was easy just to plug it in. She definitely has taken this into account as she moved into 2024. I know that there's some of her calculations. Now, we always want to figure a little low, you know, so, you know, it's not like I told, well, we had the conversation and said, let's plan on $1 million. You know, I think we planned on a little less than that just to be smart, but absolutely. That we've agreed that, you know, once a year toward the end of the year, when it gets close to budget time, that we need to sit down and talk about what's coming for the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I have a comment.
Oh,
actually.
sorry.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, as a follow-up to projecting the revenue, interest earned on proprietary revenue must be deposited into those proprietary funds. So, for instance, someone pays a water bill. You know, we've got a couple $1 million in water bill revenue sitting at any one time. That has to go back into the water fund. It can't be used for other things.
Right. And then again, that's reflected on that the 3 pages that I gave you. That's why when you look, you'll see a lot of the interest is put into the water fund or into the sewer fund, because those are the funds that have the highest balances. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that pretty much just finishes with the other elected officials. We'll move on to ordinances for first reading, and I believe all the ordinances that will be read tonight are first reading. The first one is 001-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 123-23 to update the easement and right-of-way agreement from the Ohio Power Company, AEP, for installation of electrical service to the new fire station on Stimson Avenue and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. I will go ahead and read, and beginning with Section 1, Ordinance 123-23 is hereby amended to update the easement and right-of-way agreement with the Ohio Power Company, an Ohio corporation, and a unit of American Electric Power, AEP, for installation of electrical services to the new fire station on Stimson Avenue. A copy of the updated easement, right-of-way agreement, and plat indicating the new alignment are attached here too and incorporated herein by reference. This was discussed in committee last week with prior effort to establish the easement not working out, and this is just a rerouting and an updating of the additional accompanying material details.
I believe the administration is talking about a suspension.
Yes, Director
true?
Stone, is that still a need?
If you don't mind,
We can
you can
put it out
suspend
there and see what
put it out
happens,
there.
you know.
It's not necessary. You know, there are times that I need you to do a suspension, and this one is not necessary. Like I mentioned during committee, AEP is working in good faith, going forward with this, and you know, understanding that it's going through council. So if it's, you don't need to do a suspension on this if you don't want to. One of the things that, or one of the questions that came up last week, I think it was Member Swank that asked, was does the other easement that we already granted get rescinded? And the answer is yes. I got that confirmation. They actually haven't recorded it, and they're going to return the original to me, and I will personally tear it up and throw it away. So that other easement will not exist. Of note, the two almost lay out completely on top of one another, so really, even if it wasn't rescinded, it wouldn't matter. But from a clarity to the person looking into it 50 years from now, it would be helpful for it not to exist.
Director Stone, can you comment on any delays not suspending the rules might cause?
You know, we're bringing electric into the new station via a different route now. American Electric Power previously wanted a different approach, and they were the ones that said we're going to come this way, and so we went very quickly and passed the easement. When they came back to me and said, hey, we weren't able to successfully secure an easement from this adjoining property owner that we needed for the other route, we're going to have to go a different direction. They, you know, admitted their error or their, you know, overconfidence in being able to secure that other easement, and so they said we're going to continue to work at our risk, basically, until you pass this. But I mean, if you want to pass it, you got everybody here. If you don't mind suspending it, certainly that would be just one less thing you have to talk about next week.
Just to confirm, it sounds like by failing to suspend the rules this time, it's not going to delay the next phase of the project,
No,
for example?
no, it's not.
Okay, thank you.
Member Swank?
Even though they said it's at their risk, heaven forbid there was a catastrophic accident that involved AEP employees or Athens City employees for whatever reason. We know we're going to do this. I'm not a big fan of suspending the rules, but we know we're going to do this. It just seems to me that this might warrant suspending the rules to make this just as clean as possible, so that as soon as we get this passed and it becomes law, would it be immediate? Then tomorrow, if we did this tomorrow, when they're driving across that thing, everything's kosher.
I certainly won't argue, other than when I need you to really need you to do one, like, you know, a couple months from now. You know, don't say we do this too much because you know, I try not to ask it when I
And
don't
you've
need
been
it.
very good at that. Right. Yeah, I think the last 2 years, much better than in previous years, and that's not an indictment, just an observation. I just like this thing being clean, and
Sure.
I guess I would move to suspend the rules.
We have a motion to suspend. Is there a second? We have a second. I believe we've heard the reasoning behind suspending the rules. All those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Rules are suspended. Member McCary.
Thank you. Next ordinance?
Motion
Oh,
No, you
sorry,
gotta pass
sorry.
it.
That's right, we just suspended, so motion to adopt, that was ordinance Do you have it up there?
010124.
010124.
Second.
Any discussion? We've had a motion and a second to adopt. Very well, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting 01-24 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. It's passed. Moving right along, 02-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 05-22, authorizing a city fiber network project 347, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. This was discussed in committee last week about getting internet access updated for all of our municipal buildings. This is a continuation of work that began under Project 347 previously, and I will read from Section 2. The 2022 Appropriation Ordinance 150-21 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $500,000 to ARPA Fund 286, Transaction Class 500, and the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 by $110,000 to ARPA Fund 286, Transaction Class 500, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 3 indicates that the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $610,000 from ARPA Fund 286, Transaction Class 500 for said project. Just as a comment from our last discussion, this project has been entirely funded with ARPA resources, and there will still be a little bit of those ARPA funds remaining, and we will look forward to guidance and suggestions from our City Safety Services Director about that remaining balance at another time.
Discussion. Members Spionis?
I'm just curious how much will be left.
I believe it's approximately $20,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you, Member McCary. I'm probably going to have to ask you to amend this one because I think I probably miscommunicated the intent on this specific one. So there was $250,000 placed into the budget in the 286 fund, and so it has already been appropriated. And what I meant to ask was to go ahead and appropriate the remaining, I believe it's $27,000 that's not spoken for yet. To that, and then authorize the additional $110,000 for this particular project of money that was already appropriated. And then, as you mentioned, at a different time, I would come and ask for an authorization for the remainder of which was appropriated. I was definitely unclear when I described it last week, and then I didn't check this in advance of tonight. So at a future reading, I may ask you to amend this. I don't know that we need to do it tonight because obviously I'm just, doing it off the cuff here, and I don't have those exact figures. My intent was that you go ahead and appropriate all of the rest of the money in the 286 fund. So every last cent in that ARPA fund, because it needs to get spent within a time frame. And this is one of the projects, this specific project that I think is the appropriate place to spend it on, Project 347.
It sounds like you don't have any concerns about us introducing an amendment at the next opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And like I said, I'll provide the details down to the penny to the clerk. I'm sorry about that. I was unclear last week.
Okay. Next ordinance, 03-24. An ordinance authorizing expenditures for the Richland Avenue Playground renovation project number 368, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. We did have some exciting conversation about the updates to the Richland Avenue Park last committee meeting, talking about authorizing $170,000 for this project on the South Side Park on Richland Avenue to get some modern and accessible equipment. I will begin with Section 1. The 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $170,000 to APR Income Tax Fund 273, Transaction Class 500, to support the Richland Avenue Playground renovation project number 368, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. I believe that will be sufficient for the first reading, unless folks have questions or comments.
I think it's a good idea. Okay, next ordinance. 004-22. An ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 9, General Regulations, Chapter 9.15, Parks, Open Spaces, and Nature Preserves, Section 9.15.02, 9.15.03, and 9.15.04, and Title 13, General Offenses, Chapter 13.07, Miscellaneous Offenses, Section 13.07.06, introduced by Councilmember McCary.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. We did discuss this at last week's committee meeting and had a robust discussion in particular about whether or not edibles might be included in this ordinance. And we do have the law director with us this evening in case there are remaining questions about the pros and cons to the current language, which updates the definition of use of any form of tobacco to mean all uses of tobacco, including inhaling, exhaling, burning, or carrying any lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe, or other lighted smoking device or papers for burning tobacco or any other plant, chewing tobacco, snuff, or any matter or substances that contain tobacco, including but not limited to vaping. We did not have that information specifically about vaping previously, and we've also added the important language. Use of any form of recreational marijuana includes inhaling, exhaling, burning, edibles, liquid, vapes, other lighted smoking devices or papers for burning marijuana, or any other matter of substance that contains marijuana, including but not limited to vaping. So I'll just remind council and the audience of our discussion about the potential challenges of enforcing edibles, which are not as observable as, say, a product that is emitting a vape or smoke. So I just thought it might be helpful to reassess where council members stand, and if we do have questions for the law director while she's here tonight, this might be a good time to do it.
I think I was the one that raised that point, that enforcing a ban on edibles could be really problematic. And it might, if you can imagine taking it to the extreme, it could be a matter of like checking out everybody's gummy bears, to see if they're really candy or what they are. It just seems unnecessarily difficult to me. I am completely fine with banning no smoking of anything. That seems really clear. But I think if you incorporate edibles into this, it gets a lot murkier, and that would be unfortunate for a city ordinance.
Member Wood?
Yeah, I'll just also add, I think it kind of, I hadn't noticed the recreational part. Are we doing a carve out for medical? That also seems like a bit of a dicey spot to be in. It just seems like a borrowing trouble, all of it. But are we gonna is it okay to have people that have medical cards? Are we gonna ask people for medical cards? The whole thing just seems a little.
I do believe that is a question we haven't had answered yet, specifically the question about recreational marijuana being smoked at a outdoor recreational facility on city grounds. And based on the current language, I wonder if our law director can clarify whether or not this language would permit someone with a marijuana prescription from smoking at the Richland Avenue Park, hypothetically.
Well, we specifically state in there recreational marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about medical marijuana at all. So,
Yeah, so it would be it would be permissible, it seems, legally.
I think if you had a card,
Yeah.
that it would be. I think it would be hard to enforce that. If someone, here the ordinance is to talk about any sort of smoke in our public parks. And if you want to add medical marijuana, I suppose you could do that. I don't really see a purpose for that. I think that we're basically talking about recreational marijuana, just like somebody's smoking a cigarette. And recreational marijuana. It's your decision as far as the edibles. That's a council decision. I think I said that in a memo I sent out to council. But again, I think it would be hard to enforce the medical marijuana. And I think the question that was asked of us from Arts, Parks, and Recreation was to amend this provision to include recreational marijuana. There had been no mention of medical marijuana.
Member Allen?
I'm having trouble finding the edible part. Which section of this is there? I've gone up and down this thing 3 times and I can't find it.
Let's see, under 91502 definitions, and the 1, 2, third paragraph, use of any form of recreational marijuana, including inhaling, exhaling, burning, edibles, liquids,
Oh, okay,
vapes,
it's
it's in there. It's right there. Now, farther down, it does say, no person shall use any form of tobacco or recreational marijuana. And I think that, I watched council from last week and that question came up. So if council would choose to take out, amend this to remove edibles, I think that the statement that no person shall use any form of recreational marijuana probably would include, would give the message and include edibles. So it's really up to council to make that motion. Yes.
So if I heard that right, and I think I said this last week, we could cut it, use of any form of recreational marijuana, period.
You could.
Because any's pretty all-inclusive.
There's a comment on that.
And take out edibles, is that what you're saying?
I'll take out all that stuff.
Wait, which stuff?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean. Take out liquid vapes or other lighted smoking devices.
Just say any use of, it's like drinking. We don't have to define,
Okay.
you know,
Use of any form of
151
recreational
rum or-
marijuana.
yeah.
That would work also.
Isn't ultimately that's what we're trying to do? Not have
Yes.
marijuana use in the park?
Yes.
So why not just say use of any form of recreational marijuana?
And that would work.
Member Spalding has been trying to say something.
Yeah, again, as I said last week, I see this as an issue of smoking in the parks. And that I completely feel comfortable with. But the edibles thing, I don't. And I think it would be really messy to say that you could, if you have a special state card, that you can smoke marijuana, you know, if you have a medical issue, but you can't if you have, I mean, so anybody can be approached and go, well, do you have your card with you? I think that'd be, let's just ban smoking, period. I think, to me, that's the issue. And, you know, the edibles thing, as Beth said, what the heck? I think that would be really hard to how do you check for that? I
Yeah.
think that would be just messy. And I think it would really irritate people.
So are you suggesting taking out, saying use of any form of marijuana
Yeah.
Yeah.
and take out the recreational from there and then 91503 and then the A section?
I think you could keep all the specifics and delete the mention of edibles, in my opinion, but leave the others in the sequence.
Okay.
Member Swain?
Legally, can an elected body dictate where and when an individual can take prescribed medication?
That's an interesting question. And I suppose you could also have Americans with Disabilities Act question that comes up. So, I mean, I can research this for next time, but I think right now the ordinance does need some work, and perhaps at second reading there can be an amendment.
Another comment?
Yes.
Okay, one more comment. Okay, so if someone has a medical card and they have an edible, I'm not opposed to that. So I think that would cover that issue. But I just don't want them smoking, because I think that can interfere with someone else's experience in the park. And that's what my concern is. I don't want somebody smoking in some kid's face.
Member McCary.
It seems, back to the details in section 9:15:02 definitions, the use of any form of recreational marijuana includes inhaling, etc. If we do remove the word edibles from that section and leave the language on recreational marijuana being prohibited without mentioning edibles specifically, it doesn't then say anything about prescription marijuana, as the law director indicated, and it seems we would be at a place where we don't have the concern about edibles, but we haven't attempted to do anything about the prescription marijuana use. So, yeah, okay.
And one other idea about the language, if we just cut the words "any form of," so that it would be use of recreational marijuana includes the rest of that sequence, but with the deletion of edibles if we decide on that. So that we get rid of the whole issue of any form, just the ones we're stating.
Okay, Member Wood, and then we'll have to wrap this up.
Service Safety Director Stone also raised his hand, but I also am curious, as we have nuance developed at the federal level on Delta 8 versus Delta 9, et cetera, what is allowable and what is, marijuana has now taken on kind of a weird pseudo-marijuana products as well that are out there and are totally legal for all extents and purposes. I think the whole thing's well-intentioned, but is probably just not written in a way that, is particularly conducive to actual good legislation. So I don't really like it. I agree, smoking is a public nuisance, et cetera. I just think it gets into, well, this isn't marijuana, this is hemp, this is, there's just so much, many headaches and borrowed trouble from the whole thing as far as I'm concerned, so.
Service Safety Director, do you have something?
Sure, just a comment, and I'm making the extremely dangerous activity of Googling the Ohio Revised Code while sitting here listening to the discussion. But section 3796.06, forms of medical marijuana, B1 says the smoking or combustion of medical marijuana is prohibited. So I don't think in Ohio that you can smoke medical marijuana, or at least it can't be, that's not the way that you can, under the medical marijuana provisions of the law. Now, obviously, with the change, with addition of recreational marijuana, that's a whole other, opens up a whole other Pandora's box, but insofar as there's medical marijuana law, I think it's already prohibited to smoke medical marijuana. So if that matters to your discussion.
So what it sounds like to me is that we take out the recreational marijuana, although I don't think we have to based on that definition, but just remove edibles from here. I think that will, and if someone wants to amend that tonight, I guess that would be fine, because it also includes under A, no person shall use any form of tobacco or recreational marijuana, and that would, if you had to use, include edibles, so.
Okay.
Or we can wait till next week also.
I just want to interject in all this. It seems to me there's two issues here going parallel. One is the smoking in public and being a public nuisance. Okay, I don't like the smell. I don't like I don't like anything about it. This person is a nuisance to me because they're smoking. That's one thing. It seems like what we've been really dealing with here. The other is the behavior of the person who gets high in a public park controlled by the city of Ohio. What are we doing about that? To me, when I read this, I thought the intent was to control behavior. I really don't care about whether or not it smells or not. What I do care about is how a person who's getting on a high is going to behave in public park, children around. What happens? How do we control that? And the point of law to me has always been you can't regulate morality, but you sure as heck can regulate behavior. And that's why we have this. So I just want to throw that out there.
I'm pretty sure that's already well covered under public intoxication is illegal, period. Public intoxication doesn't deviate as far as I know. I mean, law director might have, but it doesn't differentiate between how you're intoxicated. Public intoxication is public intoxication.
Yeah.
So that's already covered. We don't need to, again, borrow more trouble for that. As far as I
didn't say
would
how
I be
we're
right in
borrowing
that,
anything.
law director?
That's right, disorderly conduct.
Yeah, there's already plenty of things covering that.
Well, anything else to say on this, or have we pretty much beat this horse to death? Okay, moving right along. Ordinance 05-24. An ordinance authorizing engineering design services for the Columbus Road Shared Use Path Project number 365, introduced by Councilmember Spielness.
Yes, thank you very much. So we discussed this last week, and the first one is very exciting, as I mentioned, to authorize appropriate money for engineering design services for the Columbus Road Use Path. And let me just cover a couple things in here. So ODOT has awarded the city's safety funds for 90% of the eligible construction costs, up to a cap of $1,032,881. And so Section 1 says the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to enter into contract for engineering design services for the Columbus Road Shared Use Path Project number 365. Section 2, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance 130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance a sum of $160,000 to Street Fund 220, Transaction Class 500, and increasing the total appropriations by said amount. Section 3, the Service Safety Director is further authorized to expend up to $160,000 from Street Fund 220, Transaction Class 500 for said Project 365. So the bottom line is we've got this cool shared path opportunity that we need some design money for that will be one part of trying to get that road, Columbus Road, looking more like part of a city rather than a large highway. So I was talking with the Public Works Director today, and he was quite enthusiastic about how this was going to work and really change the corridor into the city. So I am very much in favor of this, and wonder if you have any questions or if our Service Safety Director would like to add to that.
Member Swain?
I have a question for Director Stone. After our meeting last week, not that night, but the next day, I went down and drove that from Theater Drive to, the ending point there, and noticed there are a lot of elevation changes. So my question is, how far off of the existing route, old Route 33, Columbus Road, is that going to be? Because there are places where it drops off 6-8 feet. There are utility poles that go through there, short of a meandering thing like that. How far off it's going to be so we have some kind of a straight line or straight shot?
Sure. Thank you, Member Swank, for the question. There will be some meandering. I mean, there will have to be in order to avoid objects, drainage features. Certainly utility poles can be made to move. If they're in public right of way, you can direct a private utility company, if it's in the way of a public improvement, to move out of the way. Probably one of the most challenging sections is the area across from the motorcycle dealership, because you're getting very close to a culvert outfall and down to the river in that area, and so it might have to be crowded closer. But as a good rule of thumb, an 8-foot buffer between edge of pavement and the beginning of the path is probably what we would want to shoot for. There is a shy distance that is built into roads with greater than 25 mile per hour design speed. So, portion of Columbus Road is 35 miles per hour, portion of Columbus Road is 45 miles per hour as far as the prima facie speed limit. And so, we'll have to build outside the shy distance in instances there, but I think we can do it. And Sally's got some great ideas about how to approach it.
That's why we need a design firm.
Yeah, we need a design. Any other discussion?
I just want to add on that a community member came up afterwards, after a council meeting, and voiced their support, saying that they felt like as a cyclist that this would really make the bike paths more accessible and safer. So just wanted to add that to the record, that we had a community member mention that afterwards, and I thought that was a great note.
Any other comments? All right, moving on to 006-24, an ordinance authorizing disposal of a vehicle and equipment no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Spielness.
Yes, this is one of those, as I mentioned, kind of boring things we have to do in council, but here we go. First, there is a vehicle that has 200 and some thousand miles on it. I forget how many. Oh, 273,559 miles on it. That's pretty good. It's been used well and needs to be sold for scrap. And then the other item is a fan that, and we discussed this nicely, it was explained how this would work, but we're going to trade a van with the Waterloo Volunteer Fire Department because the parts are different and they have the appropriate parts, and anyway, so this will make it better for, it's a nice win-win with another community. So that is, but we have to approve of that trade. So that's it.
Sounds good to me. Any comments from the administration on this? Members of council? Okay. Moving on, 007-24, an ordinance authorizing unneeded or obsolete municipal personal property to be sold by internet auction. Normally, this comes under our Finance and Personnel Committee, which I am chair, and I would normally read that. But since I'm pro tem tonight, I thought I'd let members of the Finance and Personnel Committee jump in on this. So I would ask Member Clodfelder to introduce this ordinance.
So be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, Athens City Council, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 721.15D, hereby authorizes the Service Safety Director or their designee to enter into an agreement with a government auction service to conduct internet auctions for the selling of unneeded or obsolete municipal personal property, and shall require the bidder to pay all fees, taxes, and charges. Auction items will be advertised for no less than 10 days, including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. Section 2. This ordinance shall be in full force and effect at the earliest moment permitted by law upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Members of council? Administration? Good job there. Moving right along, 008-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 50-23, authorizing wastewater remote site telemetry improvements, project number 339. I've asked Member McCary to introduce the ordinance.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Reisner. Ordinance 08-24 reads, be it ordained by the Council of the City Council of Athens, Ohio, Section 2 of Ordinance 50-23 is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 2, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $1,150,000 from Sewer Plant Fund 750.637, Transaction Class 500 for said project. This ordinance will be in effect in full force upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Discussion? Questions? Administration, want to jump in on this one? Very good. Ordinance O-09-24, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to submit an application and enter into a Water Pollution Control Loan Fund, WPCLF, agreement for planning, design, and/or construction, designing a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency. I should have said designating. I'd like to ask Member Wood to introduce us.
Oh, boy.
Got to be on your toes around here.
This is what I get for complaining about marijuana, huh?
There's always paper.
An ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to submit an application and enter into a water pollution control loan fund, a WPCLF agreement for planning, design, and construction, designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency. Whereas the City of Athens intends to apply for water pollution control loan funds to complete critical improvements to the city infrastructure that would allow for future growth, and whereas this updated the authorization provided by Ordinance 144-19, adopted December 16th, 2019 for project number 330, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to submit an application and enter into a water pollution control loan fund agreement for planning, design, and construction through the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and once awarded, administered through the Ohio Water Development Authority, OWDA, to complete critical improvements to city infrastructure that would allow for future growth. Project 330. The dedicated source of the loan repayment will be the sewer fund derived for sewer fees. This ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of Athens, the City of Athens, Ohio, in order to meet the loan application timeline, and shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
I believe you requested a suspension on this one tonight?
Thank you, Member Asher. So this ordinance, you passed it before in December of 2019. And other than the words, whereas the updates to this updates authorization provided by Ordinance 144-19 adopted December 16, 2019. So otherwise, council passed this resolution or this ordinance already. The Ohio EPA has asked us to functionally refresh it because of the amount of time it's taken to do this project. So in order to get the application in, I'd ask you to suspend and pass. It's the next two ordinances that I'm going to ask you to delay on, but this one in particular, I'd like you to go ahead and pass it if you would, so that we can get this application turned in.
Do we have a motion to suspend the rules?
So move.
Seconded?
Second. We have a motion and a second. We've heard the reasoning behind this. So I call for a vote. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Rules are suspended. Member Wood, would you make a proposal or motion to adopt?
Yes.
0924.
I'm sorry, I forgot the magic words.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt
Thank you.
ordinance.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 0-0924.
Second.
Very well. We have a motion and a second. We've had discussion on this. Good job of introduction, by the way. So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting whatever this ordinance is, 09-24, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. It is passed.
Yeah.
There you go. That leaves one more, and we're running out of committee members.
It's like third grade reading.
Yeah.
Out loud.
O-10-24, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contracts for construction and construction engineering of the City Sewer System Improvements Project number 330 and declaring an emergency. I'll drop back to Member Clotfelder.
All right. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Athens, Ohio, Section 1, the 2024 Appropriation Ordinance O-130-23 is hereby amended by appropriating from the unappropriated balance the sum of $1,700,000 to Sewer Fund Plant 750.637 TC 500, and increasing the appropriations by said amount. Section 2, the Service Safety Director is hereby authorized to expend up to $1,700,000 from Sewer Fund Plant 750 TC 500 for said project number 330. Section 3, this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the health, welfare, and safety of the residents of the city of Athens, Ohio, in order that bids can be accepted as soon as the city receives Ohio EPA approval to do so, and it shall be in full force and effect upon its passage and approval by the mayor.
Thank you. Discussion? Anyone? Member? Administration, please.
So, thank you, Member Reisner. So, the bids opened on Friday. As I mentioned last week, the whole plan was to have bids open, and then we do two ordinances, or three ordinances in quick succession, two ordinances and one resolution in quick succession, so that we can turn this quickly. The one that you just suspended and passed, as well as the appropriations ordinance, which is this one, as well, and the resolution of tentative award, which is a special requirement under the Water Pollution Control Loan Fund. Those bids were much higher than we anticipated, number one, nor that we can award. So the Ohio Revised Code limits our ability to awarding a contract when the lowest bid is greater than 20% above the engineer's opinion of probable cost. And so we got one bid on this project. It was around $2.4 million, which is greater than 20% from the engineer's estimate. And so we're not legally allowed to award it anyway. So we basically have to recock and re-advertise, make modifications to the specifications, adjust the engineer's estimate, and put it back on the street. I don't believe that it's going to cost that much. $2.4 million, I think and we do see this from time to time, particularly when there's only one bidder, that you will have a situation where a contractor, when they know that it can't be awarded because it's greater than 20% of the opinion of probable cost, they'll throw their bid and they'll put something out there, but they won't give their best number. So we're going to go back and do this again. So what I would ask you to do this evening is go ahead and table this one, and then when it comes back to first reading, we'll amend it with whatever the new amount will be after the next time that we open the bid, and likewise the next one, which is a resolution, I'd ask you to do the same thing.
Do we have a motion to,
Move to table, 01024.
Second.
very well. We've heard the reasons for tabling this, so call for a vote. All those in favor of tabling this ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, it's tabled. That brings us down to the one reading resolution. I'll take care of that one. R-01-24, a resolution supporting the tentative award of contracts for construction and construction engineering of the city sewer system improvements project number 330. I'd like to make a motion to table this ordinance.
Seconded.
For the same reasons for the first tabling. So I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The resolution's been tabled. Announcements and other business. Member Swank.
This would primarily be for the law director and perhaps for comment from the City Safety Services Director. As evidenced by the attendance we've had at recent council meetings, not tonight, I'm glad you folks are here though, there is still great interest in the Council of Governments. And today we all received an email in regards to that, inquiring about the process. And I responded to the East Side resident in the following manner. As it's been explained to council, the process is two steps. First, the exploration of the formation of a COG is an administrative duty. After that, the second is the act of joining the Council of Governments will require City Council action by way of an ordinance. I hope this helps. The individual came back with, I have this question, administrative, and I guess this is where I would engage the law director. I have this question, not me, this is the constituent. Administrative, is there a reference in ORC for COG by a city administration? Is there a process to follow? It will be helpful to know who will be involved in the process. Have these people been appointed? Is the process underway? Is there anyone from council involved in this? I believe there was talk of specific committee members in Safety Service Committee. Then the ordinance must be passed with 3 readings. Does that mean if this is passed, the COG will be in effect? I read this and ask these questions for the simple reason this is an issue that the media is covering, all 3 papers, 4, including I take that 5 with WOUB, that are covering on a weekly basis. If you follow social media at all, there are lots of comments on there. And I say that in the context, there's a lot of information out there and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I thought these were pretty decent questions that the constituent asked. I was hoping that tonight we might get an answer to those so that we can convey to the public where we are in this possible process, what next steps may be, and what may happen.
Perhaps that's a question for the administration as to where they are on their exploration.
Member Swank, from time to time, I get emails that have a series of questions, 10, 20 questions in them, and oftentimes those are meant for rhetoric. I don't think I can answer all 10 or 15 questions in my answer, but I am prepared to sit down with the members of the Soil and Water District not the Soil and Water District, the Solid Waste District, who were appointed to explore the matter and look into it. I'll have another member of the administration with me. Don't know who that is right now. Team's spread pretty thin. But, as all things fall to my responsibility, I'll make sure it gets done.
Great. And then the second part, I guess, go back to the law director. Let's make the assumption, and this is strictly an assumption, that out of those explorations and negotiations, would those be appropriate words, explorations and negotiations between possible entities for a COG?
I don't know that we're at a point to negotiate, but I would say, certainly exploration.
Okay. So exploration takes place, and let's make the assumption that there are enough parties willing to move forward to establish a COG, and let's say that one would get established by the appropriate entities. It then would go to, in our case, would go to council for us to go through the committee 3 reading process to approve.
There would be no other way to do that except to have an ordinance authorizing the administration to enter into an agreement with the COG.
Okay. So yeah, just want to be clear, it's an administrative function to start with. As time permits and personnel permit, conversations will most likely take place. We can't speculate what those will be. But once that's done, if it's deemed that we move forward, then council gets involved in that point and not until that point.
That's correct.
Okay. I can't put it any clearer.
Thank you. Any other business announcements? Anybody out there? Okay. Opportunities for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. I see 2. You'll have 3 minutes, and we'd like to know who you are and if you represent any groups.
Good evening, Athens City Council. My name is Casey Sutton. I don't represent any city groups. I'm a homeowner on Whitland Lane, and my house was damaged by the US 50 sewer project. I moved to Athens in December 2018. January 2019 was when I officially closed on my house. I'm an Army veteran, and I used the VA home loan to purchase my house. Not even 3 years later, after being a homeowner, I have extensive damage throughout my house. I have cracks in the walls and ceiling. I have, my windows don't seal correctly, and I have no idea how much this is contributing to my heating bill now. I have cracks in the poured cement foundation of my house. And I have had to pay $2,000 for an engineer report to prove that Fields Construction or Fields Excavation, owned by Jeff Fields, was at fault for this. So the first thing I did after I found out that I had all this damage in my house was look online to find out what the process was to file a claim. And unfortunately, all I could find was 10 pages saying that how I, as a homeowner, would be responsible for damage to the sewer line when I hook up. And there's not anything online saying what the process is to do anything. This is not an isolated incident. Fields Excavation has a very bad track record that's easily available online. They have a court case here where they've damaged 5 other houses on a past project. And they've even sued OSHA because OSHA fined them for unsafe excavation practices. They tried to sue OSHA to overturn this and lost. And so my question is a rhetorical question, is why is Fields Excavation being used for the future phases of this project? Additionally, they violated item 8 of the public contract, which states that they need to do all construction within the easements, and I have photo and video evidence of them operating a 5-ton excavator less than 50 feet from my front door. I have extensive damage throughout all of my house from construction vibration damage. And there's not really a end in sight or light at the end of the tunnel for me. I do have a claim in with their insurance company, which is Travelers Insurance. But the person who came to inspect my home told me that according to Ohio law, they only have to pay depreciated value for the damages. So the only way that I can be made whole is to pursue legal action against Fields Excavation. So I come here questioning the wisdom of using Fields Excavation for future services, and I also come here to warn other Athens citizens that I was honestly in a very lucky position because I bought my house so recently. So I have a home inspection that shows none of these damages were here when I purchased my house. But now my floors creak and groan every time you walk on them. I was woken up last night at 2 a.m. because my girlfriend had to retrieve something from the 3rd floor. And I mean, it sounds like someone's walking on popcorn. And it's hard to imagine even being able to sell my house again in the future when I'm walking around with a real estate agent and another family interested in buying the house. And to only get depreciated value means that I'm going to have to come out of pocket to try to get any of this made whole unless I find a lawyer and sue Fields Excavation.
You've already went past your 3 minutes, but
Okay, well, I guess that's really all I had to say.
is there anything you're wanting from council? I mean,
I would like them to not use Fields Excavation for future projects, and I would like to warn other citizens that if you have the construction company working outside your property, it's in your best interest to take pictures of your house before they start working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good question. Let's see, Safety Service Director.
What?
Can I ask a question, Andy?
Okay.
Relative to what we just heard, I would assume that this Fields Excavation Service is a subcontractor, and if not a general contractor, depending on which one it is, or it really doesn't matter which one it is this company currently under contract and doing any other projects that involve the city of Athens?
Thank you very much, Mr. Lang. I'll check. Whitland Lane is outside the city limits, so this project is not a city project.
Okay.
I'm unaware of another project that that we're using them for. Certainly, they'd be eligible to bid on construction if the city bids a project, unless they were debarred, for one reason or another. We have debarred contractors in the past. It's very difficult to do. I think one, we did so because, on a previous incident, they were using child labor. And so we basically made it a standing city policy that we wouldn't award to them again. But otherwise, it's very difficult under Ohio law to not award to a low bidder if they're a competent contractor. You could argue that in this case they're not, but I don't know that the city has experience with that per se. But certainly we can look into if they're doing other work in the area.
So if this was outside the city limits, this wasn't a city project?
No, this was not a city project.
Okay, great, thank you.
You, sir, you're next. Name and group.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Buckley. I'm with no group, but I own A-Town Pies and Fries and Athens Rise and Grind, which are both food trucks. And over the years, I know food trucks and vending has been a major issue with the city. And I was part of a group several years ago that was the Athens Vendors Mobile Association. And before a little diss on that, I separated myself from that group because I did not feel the leadership was my views. But what I'm looking to do is to kind of reform something like that to really help with the mobile businesses, because the average rate growth in 2018 and 2023 was 4.9%, worth $1.49 billion. And there's a compound annual growth rate expected 6.4 till 2030, up to $2 billion. So it's a very growing business. And the question is, does people really know how many vendors there are in Athens and surrounding counties? And it might be a shock to realize there's 35 to 50 food trucks within Athens County and Meigs County. And so what we're looking is, actually I'm bringing this on to myself that I haven't talked to start a group, but bring it to you guys to have a committee to review everything about the mobile association or mobile vending. Part of it is uptown, and I feel I used to be uptown, and it's almost impossible for vendors to operate consistently uptown. Money's not the issue, not the monthly costs. It's the restrictions of other cars parking there, blocking, the time frames. And that's something I would like the council to maybe address and see what can be done. Not only uptown, also there's other places in the city of Athens that I think we started to look at. West State Park, down on East State Street. And there's a lot of things that could be done that really could help. So my coffee truck, I actually just got the approval. My truck is 23 feet long, so I have to file an appeal because it's over 20 feet. In the short term, I did request to purchase 2 spots, which is, I believe, $200 a month per spot for $400 a month, if I'm correct. So I got to pay for 2 spots. But the way it's designed, I think it needs some work. And I've looked to be going uptown with it soon. And I'm not going to be there every day. And I have other spots to do with. So my question is I would like to visit and discuss more in future about possibly restarting up the committee with the Athens Vendor Mobile Association. It's hard to say. And with some committees. I understand you had discussions and was really leading the way, and I think Jessica's stuff was too. And like I said, I stepped away because I was not I didn't have the same views as the leadership before, but I'm looking to start that up again. So, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Committee would that come through? Transportation?
Transportation.
I think it's planning. It
Planning.
was just an ad hoc discussion committee 4 years ago? 5 years ago? Yeah.
It's also a matter for code to look into, too.
So it may depend on which aspect of vending. Okay.
I think the speaker's talking about all aspects.
Ideally, yes, all aspects. I mean, just uptown is a small section, but I think it needs to be reviewed because it is a growing industry and there's more and more trucks coming every week.
I agree. Administration, anything? All right, if there's no one else who wants to speak, next item is adjournment. I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn at 8:15 p.m.
Do we have a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.